You're on.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our October 5th Board of County Commission meeting. And we are going to begin this morning with our invocation by Pastor Stan Allen from Redeemer Lutheran Church. And Pastor Allen will be followed leading the Pledge of Allegiance by Wendy Matheson. Wendy is a retired Army Reserve Chief Warrant Officer, and she served 20 years and was deployed to Kuwait, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and Port-au-Prince, Haiti. So thank you for being here. Please stand.
Let's pray. Merciful Father, we are so thankful for this day, another day which you have given to each of us to serve. Thank you for this joy and for this blessing. Lord, we also thank you for the various gifts which you have given to each of us, and today we are especially thankful for the gifts given to each of our county commissioners, and that they would serve the people of Martin County with wisdom, compassion, and joy. Lord, I pray for guidance and strength for our commissioners as they discuss the matters at hand, and that you would be with them as they carry out their work with a spirit of joy, enthusiasm, and humility. Merciful Father, we're also thankful for all who work in local government and their service to the people of Martin County, and I ask that you bless them. I ask this in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much for being here. Okay, on this morning's agenda, we have no additional items and no consentables. And with that, we'll be looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, move approval of the agenda with a consent. Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith to approve the agenda, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And we have one proclamation this morning. We are going to present a proclamation for Manufacturing Month. And Laura, would you like to introduce that?
Absolutely. Good morning, Commissioners. Martin County is committed to building a stronger, healthier, more resilient economy, and manufacturing is a top industry in our county. Recognizing October as Manufacturing Month is an opportunity to celebrate the manufacturers who call Martin County home, educate the community on the important role they play in our local economy, and inspire the next generation of manufacturing talent to work locally. And here to accept, along with some other folks, we have Joan Goodrich, who's the Executive Director of the Business Development Board of Martin County.
Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners, Administrators. I'm Joan Goodrich from the Business Development Board, your economic development partner, and we're so pleased to be here this morning to accept this proclamation on behalf of our economic partners too at our chambers, Economic Council, the Small Business Development Center, the Treasure Coast Manufacturers Association, and others who are looking to support our manufacturers here in our community. Celebrating manufacturers during the month of October is an exciting opportunity because we've got more than 450 manufacturers who call Martin County home, and they are designing and creating such products as aircraft parts and equipment, boat and accessories, medical, dental, hospital equipment, millwork and floor materials, stairs, fabricated metal products, food and beverages, and many more items. Today I'm joined with two of our manufacturing leaders representing this distinguished group in our local economy, Larry Hawes with the general manager of Air Burners, a manufacturer who has called our community home for more than 25 years. They manufacture pollution control boxes for the wood waste. They're headquartered here in Palm City. Did you know that most black carbon is actually generated from the open burning of wood waste? So Air Burners founder and inventor Brian O'Connor came up with the solution for this, and now their air burners uses the air curtain technology to trap these black carbon emissions and prevent their escape into our atmosphere. So just an example of a manufacturer in our clean and green hub of excellence. Additionally, air burner products are at work on every continent except the Antarctica at this particular time. And I know Larry would love me to say that they are expanding their team in Palm City, and they're looking for welders and fabricators, painters, and fiberglass technicians to join their team. So if you are a local who's looking for a great company, I invite you to reach out to Air Burners. Additionally, we're so pleased that Jamil Makati, owner of American Stair Parts, is also with us this morning to accept this proclamation. Jamil and his family have owned American Stair Parts. They've been in our community for decades, and they're dedicated to providing the quality stair parts in a timely and affordable manner to our construction contractor, home builders, installers, and do-it-yourself homeowners. You might see Jamil's facility housed in the 15,000 square foot facility. That you can't miss it as you drive up and down I-95 and the Florida Turnpike, and we're so pleased that he continues to grow in our community. Again, these leaders represent the manufacturers who are investing, innovating, creating products for the U.S. and around the world, and we're just so pleased that they call Martin County home. Manufacturing is one of the reasons why we're distinctive by design. Thank you.
Okay, that is our only proclamation this morning, and we are going to move on to public comment. We have a number of public comment request to speak forms. You will have 3 minutes to speak, and you will receive a warning just 15 seconds before your time is up, and that will indicate that you should wrap up for the 3-minute limit. And if you would like to speak, right now will be general public comment. If you'd like to speak on a particular item, we will call that during the item. So the first general public comment form I have today is Suzanne Shields. Suzanne will be followed by Stephen Berdelsky. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Suzanne Shields. I have lived in Martin County for 50 years. I was asked by our pickleball community at Langford Park to come and speak to you this morning about wanting and needing additional pickleball courts at Langford Park. It is the fastest growing sport in America. 5 years ago, there were 500,000 players. Now there are 2.5 million. So that's an increase of 5-fold. All ages enjoy the sport. We have at Langford Park people from 50 to 87 in the morning playing every day. In the evening, it's usually 50 and younger. We have the high school kids that are now interested in pickleball, so we need more pickleball courts. Right now we have 4, and we need an increase of, I won't even put a number on it, but it's an increasing sport, and we would love to have your participation and feedback in how we can build more courts at Langford Park. Langford Park is a large park. There seems to be many areas of the park that are underutilized. We've been playing there every morning this summer. There are volleyball courts, 2 volleyball courts, usually utilized on Saturday or Sunday, one, not two. We have racquetball courts that are currently being painted. Unfortunately, we don't see anybody playing racquetball at the racquetball courts, so there are 4 of those. We have tennis courts. We have at least 4 tennis courts. Sometimes in the summer there are a few players. Usually they're used more in the winter, but we could use 1 tennis court and build 3 to 4 pickleball courts on 1 tennis court. So there's 4 tennis courts that could be converted to pickleball courts. I haven't even touched on the baseball areas because I know that's very sacred ground out there. But perhaps an area out there could also be looked at for potential pickleball courts. I have a petition that we've signed. It's only took us about 3 days to get 75 names. I'm sure we could get a lot more. Usually the wintertime, it gets to be very, very busy on our courts. We have 20 to 30 people waiting 20 to 25 minutes to play a game. So we really would love to have an increase of pickleball courts at Langford Park. And we invite you to come out, take a look at what we have, and invite you to play. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I'll leave this petition with y'all.
Okay. Our next speaker is Stephen Burdelski, followed by Robin Gunby.
Good morning, Commissioners. Unfortunately, I'm here again today to address the issue before the Commission regarding Southeast Sharon Street and Flamingo Drive and Hope Hills, also known as Papaya Village. On 9/21/2021, I received a new ballot from Martin County Public Works requesting a vote regarding the connection of Southeast Flamingo and Southeast Sharon Street. I voiced my opposition to the connection of these 2 roads on August 24th before the Commission. The current concern, and I sent each of you an email regarding this, I want to bring forward is the deceptive, conditional language in the new ballot. Immediately upon seeing it, it was apparent it was written in an effort to convince the respondent in voting for the connection of the 2 roads. This is evident because it states trash pickup on Flamingo Road would be contingent on the paving of the road and its connection to Southeast Sharon Street. This is a false statement. If the road is paved and taken over by the county, we all know the county will service that paved county road and provide pickup. That's conditional once it becomes a county road. Secondly, the ballot falsely asserts the connection of the 2 roads will not increase traffic. The connection of the 2 roads may not increase traffic in the whole of Papaya Village, but it will immediately increase traffic on Southeast Sharon Street, which is now a dead end. What is interesting, after receiving the ballot, I contacted Pamela Knott at Public Works, and she told me the ballot was drafted by you, Commissioner Jenkins, as well as Mr. Zama. And
Just address the board as a whole, please.
okay. And in that, in doing that, that is deceptive language. Specifically, Florida State Statute 350.041 governs Florida Commissioner Standards of Conduct. Paragraph F of the statute states, a commissioner during his or her term in office may not make any public comment regarding of the merits proceeding under Florida State Statute 120.569 and 120.57, currently pending before the Commission. I was sent an email by a resident of Southeast Sharon Street from the Nextdoor app. And we can't be certain, but in this app, there's a like to the connection of the roads by a Harold Jenkins. Not sure who that Harold Jenkins is. We can't immediately conclude that that's Mr. Jenkins. And then Florida State Statute states, and I quote, a commissioner must avoid impropriety in all of his or her activities and must act at all times in a manner that promotes public confidence. I think we should put this to rest. I think the Commission should vote on this matter, and it should be put to rest. This is being elongated beyond what it should be done. We need to...
Time's up, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our next speaker is Robin Gunby, and Robin will be followed by Tom Pine. Good morning.
I've lived on Southeast Sharon Street for about 20 years, and it's always been closed. I've raised 3 children there, and I would appreciate it. I oppose to opening that street up. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Tom Pine, and Tom will be followed by Barry McLaughlin.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Tom Pine. I presently live in Jensen Beach, Florida. I went to high school from 1962 through 1966. Over the 4 years, rumor had it that 3 girls had an abortion during that time. Rumor had it that 2 of the girls had a backdoor abortion with the hanger. The 3rd girl came from a fairly wealthy family. They weren't millionaires, but they were wealthy, comparable speaking to the rest of us. So her dad found a doctor that performed what is known as a D&C. It's not an abortion, but it has the same effect. We may now be heading back to the dark days in Florida, as more and more of our state legislators are now talking about implementing something similar to the new Texas law to make abortion illegal in Florida. It won't affect the wealthy. They will still be able to find that special doctor, the one that will perform the D&C and procedure. It won't be an abortion, but it'll still have the same effect, because in Florida, it's all about the money. Now at this commission meeting, the good old boys, the pay-to-play crowd, and the ones with the big bucks, they're a lot of the same people. They're tired of the rules and regulations in the comp plan, so staff came up with a plan to make the largest cuts yet to it, and more likely, the majority of this commission will surely support it. Because after all, Martin County and money is all the same, all that matters. Now I go back to the illegal expansion of Runway 1230 at Whitman Field. I live due west of Runway 1230. 3 of my neighbors died because of that illegal expansion. One of the men lived on the right side of my home, the other lived on the left side of my home. They both died of bone and brain cancer, which is known to be directly related to the poison from jet fumes. The 3rd man lived down the street, had a heart attack. The stress of noise and air pollution had endured years until the county finally acted. The leader of the county today led many of those dog and pony shows, never telling us any lies, just never telling us the truth. And here we are again. The same people want to destroy the comp plan, this time because it's all about the money. Greedy, greedy, greedy. And with the leadership of staff and the majority of this commission, more likely than approve another major cut to the comp plan, because that's what the people with money want. Be damned the majority of Martin County taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is going to be Barry McLaughlin. Greg, would you like to speak during PH2 or general public comment? Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Commissioners. My name is Barry McLaughlin. My wife and I live on Sharon Street since 2013. We started coming and living here in Martin County in 2004. When we moved to the street on 2013, one of the things we appreciated about it was basically a dead-end street. The only people that drove on that street were the people that lived there, or people that got lost. I'm in favor of all the people on Flamingo Street, which is another street, having their road paved and curbed. I think it's great, fantastic. Go for it. I'm opposed to replacing the berm that divides Flamingo Street from Sharon Street, because once it goes away, east of me is another berm, and that one will get taken away too, and now Sharon Street becomes a throughway all the way out to Highborn and all traffic going south on US 1. I don't want increased traffic. I don't want Sharon Street to become a thoroughfare. I love the peace and quiet of it. I hope it stays that way. I'm opposed to it, and I'm really worried about somebody using subterfuge to impersonate one of the commissioners, so that it indicates the commissioner is in favor of it. I don't think that's right. I don't think it is. Commissioner Jenkins. I think somebody's impersonating.
Please address the board as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rick Hingman, followed by Tanya Heinman. Heinman?
Good morning,
Good morning.
Commissioners. Thank you for hearing our voices concerning a proposed connection of South. My name is Rick Heineman. Sorry. I just want to thank you for just hearing our voices about the proposed connection of Southeast Flamingo Drive and Southeast Sharon Street. Upon reviewing the survey that the county mailed, I am very concerned with several issues. The first issue is that the verbiage on the new survey not only contains inaccuracies such as waste management won't collect garbage in front of each house without connection, but is very biased and leading instead of being neutral. This survey lists reasons to vote yes while ignoring the many valid reasons for voting no. The second issue is that a similar survey was sent out in February, resulting in over 80% of the community voting no to the opening of not only Duncan and Highborn, but other streets in Hope Sound, or Hope Hills and Papaya Village. This survey was all-encompassing and included all other streets, which would include the no outlet berm between Sharon Street and Flamingo Drive. The majority of our community voted no to opening and connecting of all streets. The third issue is that the survey included in other streets not directly affected. 100% of Southeast Sharon Street, over 20 houses, and the south section of Hope Hills Drives do not want these streets connected. We have signed petitions and results of the previous survey to support this statement. It appears that a majority of those in Southeast Flamingo Drive want to have their street paved, and this is already approved. So let's get their street paved and keep the berm. Because of the overwhelming consensus of the community, and especially the residents on Sharon Street not wanting any more connections to be made within Hope Hills, I'm requesting that the commissioners would honor our community's request to not open up the dead ends or create road connections within Hope Hills, Papaya Village, and to stop the county from proposing the opening of any more in the future. I am asking the commissioners to please help us keep the berm at the end of Southeast Flamingo and Sharon Street. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate all that you do.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Tanya Heinman, and that looks like our last speaker form for today.
Hello, Honorable Commissioners of Martin County. I come before you today to request for you to end this 2-year attack on our community, specifically our dead end on Southeast Sharon Street and Southeast Flamingo, and vote to protect our dead end and preserve our community, our safety, and our wildlife in the area. We stand for truth, we defend our homes, and we ask for you to stand for truth and defend our homes as well. The reasons presented for destroying the dead end have all been refuted and are well documented. Our community is right off US 1, and the personal safety is a big concern. We've had people come up to our door on Christmas Day and try to case our home, knock on the door and say, oh, I need a cigarette or a patch, and then we watched him pick up his phone and say, oh, someone's here. But we called the police, and so did another neighbor, and they got caught because we're on a dead end. And I just ask for you to protect us. Exhibit A, I'm speaking now for neighbor Miguel on 9297 Southeast Sharon. Exhibit A shows that I did bring a big picture to show you the gopher tortoise on the dead end that goes back and forth, and he wanted me to present this for him. We talked to the FWC, and that any increase in traffic would definitely increase tortoise mortalities. I don't know if we give this to you.
Bailiff.
Give this to you. And then Exhibit B, as it is well refuted, all the reasons that destroying the dead end would be good. Exhibit B shows all the reasons that are the truth versus the manipulation. And then Exhibit C is just a copy of the petition that all the people in Southeast Sharon have signed. And they were just asking for your support for truth. Thank you for your time. We appreciate all you do.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the public that wishes to comment during general public comment this morning? Okay, with that, we will take commissioner comment, and we'll start with Commissioner Jenkins.
Whether Sharon Street is open or not is not something I have a vested interest in. I have a vested interest in being your commissioner. We have a ballot that went out that I thought was fair. We seem to have some disagreement with that. So I don't know what to say. I mean, this is turning into something that it shouldn't. I don't know whether the berm and the end of the day is actually going to be there. They've got the whole project is to do drainage and stuff like that. So you're going to end up with bollards at dead ends to separate a street. Anyway, somehow we need to have maybe a community meeting or something. I don't know, but I thought using the democratic process would be the most appropriate way to handle it. I saw the language before it went out. I was good with it. I didn't look at it with a eye one way or the other. But anyway, the conversation continues. So we'll work it out somehow. Thank you. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
For fear of stepping into it, and I didn't want to step into it, because we don't get to talk to each other like about this stuff, so this is our time to chat. So if it seems sort of ignorant that I don't know what has transpired, it's because I don't get to talk to Harold offline and understand what happened one way or the other. So has there been any kind of a neighborhood meeting?
Not a formal meeting. I mean, I've had one-on-one meetings with people on both sides of the issue.
I don't know. Do you want me to step into this or not?
Please go for it.
So all of us in our
apparently I'm not doing very well.
No. I just it's one of those things where you just don't want to you don't want to either put fuel on the fire or you don't want to put the fire out or something like that. I don't know, but all of us in our different neighborhoods, we probably approach things differently and how we do them because we're all different in how we think about it. I've had in my district probably 3 or 4 neighborhoods that have gone through similar things, not exactly the same but similar. It was interesting. In one neighborhood, we had 3 through streets that were getting an inordinate amount of traffic on them because there was a destination at the end of the neighborhood that 50 years ago wasn't a destination for everybody outside of the community. And what transpired over 50 years is that the neighborhood's makeup changed. We have a lot of younger families, which 50 years ago there were younger families, but now they're older families. And now we have kids in this neighborhood that for 50 years hasn't had kids. And so it's an entirely different style neighborhood. And also 50 years ago in that neighborhood, Martin County was, 25,000 people. Now we're 160,000 people. And so things changed dramatically in terms of how people view neighborhoods, go through neighborhoods, and so on. So what ended up happening is we had probably 3 or 4 community neighborhood meetings to do exactly what you're going through with the community. We brought everybody together, and as it turned out, we had a church in the neighborhood that served really well to bring everybody together in the neighborhood. We provided the neighborhood with multiple solutions as to things that we as a county and our engineering staff would support that you could do in the community to slow traffic down. And that probably took close to 4 or 5 months to just continually keep working it. We did. I don't know that we did ballots, but we did. I forget in that neighborhood. We might have done ballots in that neighborhood, but it was really the consensus of the people that came to those workshops and talked about it. And we gave them options. We probably gave them 20 different options of things we could do to change the character of the neighborhood. And one of the options, which was interesting because it was reverse of what you're going through, was to close off 3 of the streets and not make them through streets. Because that was the one way to stop the through traffic on the neighborhood streets that really could have gotten shifted over to the arterial street. And at the end of the day, which seemed like a really popular thing, they voted not to close the streets, which was really the genesis of everybody going through the neighborhood. And so what we thought was going to end up happening didn't end up happening because that's not what the neighborhood had. And I, like you, said, look, that's it, even though it's my neighborhood too, that was up to the people on those 3 residential streets what they wanted. We didn't end up closing them. We're putting traffic calming measures in there to slow people down. We've reconfigured one of the roads, and we didn't close the streets off. So I don't know. I mean, I know the dynamics, just listening to the various speakers that have come over the weeks. It might help just pull everybody in the room together, Harold, at one time and say, look, here are the options. Here are things we can do. Here's what staff will support. Here's what they won't support, good or bad. And then let the neighborhood figure it out amongst themselves as to what they'll support. Because the gentleman, you sir, that got up and spoke first, I think, there may be things that you fully understand and maybe other neighbors don't. And until you bring everybody sort of in the room and you can actually look at each other, you know, your neighbors, and talk to each other, you'd be surprised. I was shocked at the end of the day because there was huge support for closing off those 3 streets. At the end of the day, that's not how they voted. And they changed up, and I'm like, okay, fine, we're not going to close the streets. And that would have been the easiest solution, honest to God, for not having people go through the neighborhood. So I know that was long-winded, and I'm sorry for the comment time, but if it's helpful, I
agree with you. It's turned into a very emotionally charged issue.
It
on
is.
both sides. I mean,
Yeah.
I hear your angst about it, but I've also heard on the other side they're as passionate as the other. So, having a meeting pitting neighbors against neighbors, not something I'm looking forward to, but it sounds like it might be.
No, but ideally, and what I found, Harold, in doing those things, sir, I forget your name, and I apologize. In the
Barry. Oh.
Steve, I'm sorry, Steve. What I found in those meetings, even though Steve may be on one side and Paul may be on the other side, or Robert, or whoever, neighbors generally at the end of the day, when you present enough information, you guys can figure it out and you'll understand, for the betterment of the neighborhood, honestly, maybe what's the best thing. I don't know. I mean, it's worth a try.
I don't know. Can you have a workshop meeting and then by invitation only? Because another thing we've been dealing with is I get comments of somebody that lives 2 miles away from this issue.
So, I'm sure it's all right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So what we did, we invited everybody on the streets that were affected in the neighborhood.
Right.
If anybody came and wasn't in the neighborhood, everybody in the neighborhood knew kind of who was in the neighborhood.
Right.
And you could speak. I mean, fine. If somebody from the other side of Hope Sound wants to come and talk about it, fine. But the neighbors are the ones really directly impacted and affected, and they're the ones really who should be given the right, I think, to vote on, at the end of the day, what's important in their neighborhood. So
I think it's a great idea. I think it's something that we need to do. George isn't in the room, but George will help me put that together. Yeah.
Anyway, that was way past my time, and thank you for whatever it's worth.
Of course.
Is that okay? Yes.
Do your thing.
Do you want to hear from the rest of us?
I think it'll help, honestly, at the end of the day, that's my sense, because usually it works out sometimes.
Do you have any additional items?
No, I've probably
today?
used up way more of my time than.
Commissioner Camping.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 2 things that are swirling around in the community as of late. The first one, if Commissioner Jenkins doesn't mind, I'd like to just give my opinion on the issue that came up this morning and has come up in the past, the Sharon Street Flamingo connection. For us, when groups of citizens come repeatedly over the course of a couple of months, and in this particular case, drive all the way up from Hobe Sound to be here for 9 o'clock comment, means that it's an issue. It's not something that popped up and died down. We're all getting those same emails. Traditionally, what we try to do, at least what I try to do, is allow a district commissioner to work on something that is very district-specific. This is not necessarily an impact that the whole county will have to participate in. But that being said, one, we don't want to just leave you out in the cold to handle it, and there's 5 of us, and eventually there's votes that are taken. I appreciate this group that came this morning. I've seen the emails from others that had, are passionate on the other side. My only concern about a community meeting is that when we read the emails and see the passion that the speakers have had on both sides of the issue, I think that meeting the wheels can fall off that meeting real fast and turn into just so here's my philosophy on this. The real question for me is, how long has the berm been there? And from what I understand, it's been there for over 20 years. Am I correct? So with that in mind, if I was looking, my wife and I are looking, or anyone looking to move into a neighborhood, we look and see, well, what's the makeup of the neighborhood? What do the streets look like? Am I moving onto a dead-end street? Am I moving near a train tracks, an airport, a fire station, a church, a school? You know what they say in real estate, right? Location, location, location. So I think 99% of the people, when they're buying a home, they're looking at the location and deciding, is this the proper location for me or not? And there might be a lot of criteria that needs to be met. Some people want to be near schools or businesses, or, you've all seen homes that are really right up on the roadway and you say, I would never live there. I would want to live tucked in a little bit more. So from my perspective, if that berm has been there for over 20 years, a majority of the residents on both sides of that knew that that was an issue or a feature when they purchased there. And the concept that you can't get waste management, the U.S. mail, or an ambulance to come down your street if the berm is there, to me doesn't genuinely hold water, because there are dead-end streets all over Martin County. And they get waste management, and they get mail, and they get fire rescue services, Amazon Prime deliveries, UPS trucks, whatever. They'll figure out a way. I don't assume any houses that are so tucked away that they don't get services. So for me, if that is the benefit or the concern that the residents that want the berm to go away feel is important for them, I personally don't see that they're not getting those services already. The issue that weighs heavier for me is the fact that if I moved onto Sharon Street because I thought it was a dead end, and whether it's traffic or I want the kids to be able to play out in front of the house without having to worry about cars passing, I specifically bought on a dead end, just like the people that bought on Flamingo specifically bought on Flamingo, and there was a berm. So whether it's a dirt berm, which I think from a fiscal point of view, if it's there and it's not officially broken, leave it alone. I wouldn't take it away to put bollards or anything else. I'd just leave it alone. So from my perspective, if we were voting, which I understand we're not, I would leave it alone and just let it stay. You bought in that dynamic on Flamingo or Sharon, that's why you bought there, and 25 years later or 20 years later, the county should not just magically decide it's changed. The surveys and the meeting, you will leave with the same answer, because like we heard today, whatever language is in that survey, and the concept that Commissioner Jenkins would have approved that language is valid, because I'm doing issues for speed tables in Palm City, and I've worked very carefully with staff to make sure that language is what I thought when I'm in Publix or church or out in the community. Someone says, this language, I have to have seen it. I have to have said, yes, I agree with that language. Then it also goes to legal. And we had a meeting where all of us had agreed on some language. And then at the last minute, Lisa Wixer, our engineer, came in and said, well, what about this? And we're like, that's exactly right. And we changed the language. Because there's no such thing as language that is so perfect that both sides will agree it's accurate. It'll always look like it's tipped one side or the other. So if this has been a thing for decades, as far as I'm concerned, if we were voting, I would leave it alone. My next point is the new rollout of the waste management recycling bins. I think each of us have received some comment, not overwhelming comment. I've probably received more comments on Sharon Street than I have on the waste management pail. It's a 64-gallon pail. I had concerns even when we were deciding to do it that it might be large for a certain segment of our population. Large for two reasons. One, that they will never generate that much recyclables in a week. If you're single, old person single, married old person couple, it's hard to generate 64 gallons worth of recyclables. I know that there were some smaller options. We had agreed to go the 64-gallon route. There is a lot of efficiencies in having a single size for the county, for the waste management, versus having a varied size situation. What I would ask of our citizens is, like anything else that's brand new, it's sort of weird and it's foreign and you feel like you have to get used to it. I remember when many years ago, either the government or the sanitation company said, you're going to have to separate out your newspaper from your regular garbage and bundle it and put it out you can't throw all of your garbage into the garbage pail and put it out. And I'm like, we're not going to do that. We're not going to put our newspapers. Then it was cans and glass and plastic. Now we're all completely used to it. Then they showed up with the yellow and the blue bins, and you had to either drag them out by themselves or buy an expensive cart or make a PVC cart and wheel them back and forth. And everyone basically got used to that. So what I would ask of our residents is take a month. Let's see how this works. The footprint is not really different in the garage, even if you have a single car garage, than the two bins. I looked at it. The footprint is a little bit different, but having the ability to roll it in and out might be a help. Let's take a month, see if this just sort of eases itself into a routine. And if not, I would ask county staff to work with Waste Management to see what other communities have done. This can't be a unique Martin County issue. There are other communities that must have figured out, how do we do this? And I did have an opportunity to speak to Mr. Sabin at Waste Management so as to not, blindside him with this request. He was perfectly comfortable with that. And so I would ask that potentially in a month or so we look at this again and see if it's no longer an issue, but if it is, that we come up with some version that might be of benefit to our residents, because as Commissioner Smith says, at the end of the day, that's our job. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Hearn.
Yes, last week we got very, very good news. The Army Corps of Engineers has awarded a contract for the C-2324 stormwater treatment area. It's a $136 million contract. The reservoir will follow closely behind. This is a remarkable benefit for us. It's going to clean up the water going into the North Fork of the St. Lucie. It's a critical project in IRL South, and we need to be very, very, we need to watch very carefully to make sure that the contract flows smoothly and that there are no delays, because this is a critical project. We need to show successes of these CERT projects so that we can continue to build upon those successes. So thank you very much to the Army Corps for appropriating $136 million in order to clean up the St. Lucie River.
Excellent. Are we planning on inviting Colonel Booth to, could we send, let's send a letter and invitation to invite him to meet everyone and maybe share his vision with the board.
Great, we'll do that.
Okay, with that, I'm all set. I would just say on the community meeting, I find it as an opportunity to kind of flush out the facts so that the residents are more educated and they can come to some compromise. So I actually enjoy the opportunities to meet with the local and have them, I think someone said up here that maybe there are neighbors that are not aware of the facts. They're just, they're hearing points from other neighbors, and it gives an opportunity to me to flush out the facts. That would be my personal perspective. So with that, Ms. Krista.
No, ma'am, I'm good.
Ms. Woods? Okay. Okay, we are going to proceed then with our first agenda item of the day, and we'll go ahead and take this in order. We don't have a large agenda. Public hearing number 1, proposed Martin County Trico settlement of the lawsuit Linda Roberts versus Martin County and Steve's Roofing, presented by Matt Graham.
Good morning, Commissioners. Matthew Graham, HR Risk Management Director, for the record. Today I'm here before you to hear the case of Linda Roberts versus Martin County and provide the opportunity for the board and the public to make comment. The case arose from a sidewalk that the plaintiff alleged had not been properly maintained by the county. Ms. Roberts was walking on the sidewalk of Northeast Martin Avenue in Jensen Beach. The plaintiff alleged that the sidewalk slab was cracked and she tripped and fell over it. She filed a personal injury lawsuit against Martin County as well as Steve's Roofing. A public hearing on this proposed settlement is required by the procedures for settlement of TRICO cases adopted by the board. Any proposed settlement of a TRICO case where the county is a defendant and involving an amount in excess of $5,000 must be considered at a public hearing prior to TRICO and the county finalizing the agreement. Following the public hearing, county staff will notify the appropriate parties that the board has completed the process required by the procedure for TRICO settlements, which includes a public hearing, which we're doing today, allowing for comment by the board and any members of the public. Just a side note, the county is self-insured and funds have been put aside by TRICO to settle this case. The county assigned Jim Williams as counsel for this case and represented the county during the settlement discussions. It is the recommendation of TRICO and Mr. Williams that this settlement is in the best interest of the county. The settlement was in the amount of $20,000. So staff recommends that the board conduct a public hearing, receive any public comment on the proposed settlement, and also staff recommends that board direct staff to notify TRICO that the procedures for the settlement of the TRICO case have been completed and the settlement should be finalized. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Anyone have questions? No? Okay, seeing that, we'll need a motion.
There's no action, right?
Oh, no action required. Oh, with public comment. We will take any public comment from gallery. Seeing none? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Received.
Information were filed and received. Public hearing number 2 is our next item. Legislative public hearing to consider transmittal of the Comprehensive Plan Amendment, CPA 21-16, Property Rights, presented by Clyde Doolin.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Clyde Doolin. I'm the Comprehensive Planning Administrator. With me is the Growth Management Director, Paul Schilling.
Hey, Clyde, can I interrupt for a second? Is that a nice new title?
No.
Pardon?
Have you had that title for a long time?
Oh, yeah, a couple years.
Really? I've never heard you use that. I've never heard you use that title before.
He's new to this.
No, it's just that was nice.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your.
We're not sure if it's a promotion or a
Yeah,
demotion,
I don't know if there was money
but
attached to that or not, but that was really good.
Thank you.
Do it again. Now that I got you completely off your game, right?
Not at all.
Not at all.
This is the...
More than that.
Good morning. This is the second of 2 public hearings on this comprehensive plan amendment. The board initiated this plan amendment because state statute has been adopted that requires the property rights element be included in the comprehensive growth management plan for every county and municipality across the state of Florida. So that while we're doing this, other cities and counties and municipalities are racing to get them done as well. The first public hearing was presented on this was done with the local planning agency. The local planning agency voted, I believe, 3-0 in favor of recommending approval of this. They did raise the discussion of the Thousand Friends model element, and we did go over that a little bit with them. This amendment creates a new chapter, Chapter 19, Property Rights. It's 1 page. Most of the language is verbatim right out of the statute that was adopted by House Bill 59 and then codified into Chapter 2012-195, Laws of Florida. So we can go over that if you'd like. But we also recommended changes to Chapter 1, Preamble, because Chapter 1, Preamble goes over the details of how you amend the plan and how you do decision making and a variety of other things that are necessary for making a comprehensive plan function. What I'd like to stop on just for a second is the language in Florida statutes. Right here you see this paragraph 10 is an existing piece of text from Florida statutes which emphasizes that the legislature and all governmental entities in this state recognize and respect judicially acknowledged or constitutionally protected private property rights. It doesn't go into the discussion of local decision-making in this existing text that's been in statute for many, many years. The new text that was adopted emphasizes twice in the process that the property rights element will ensure that private property rights are considered in local decision-making. And as I said, it's emphasized twice in this new language. So it's really pushing the onus not just to say that the Florida legislature will respect private property rights, local governments in local decision-making will do the same thing. And that's the reason for the recommended changes that are contained in this amendment. And so we made a number of small changes in the preamble, Chapter 1, which refer, like in this one you see on the screen, Martin County shall ensure that private property rights are considered in local decision-making. Because this particular paragraph in 1.6 talks about how all elements of the plan shall be considered and coordinated with state and local and state and federal regulations. And so there's also the onus on making all of the elements in the plan coordinated with each other. So that leads me to the recommended changes in Chapter 2. There's only one piece of new text proposed for Chapter 2, and you see it on the screen here. Again, we repeat the same words. Additionally, Martin County shall ensure. I don't need to read it again. And then we recommend some changes that strike language from Chapter 2, which I believe you've heard some public comment on recently. First of all, what I'd like to emphasize is that the changes in Chapter 2 involve 9 pages. And most of that language is found in other parts of the plan, duplicated, perhaps even redundant. I'm going to hold up for you the plan. The rest of this document isn't being proposed for change in any way, shape, or form. So the protections for wetlands, for upland habitat, all of the cherished policies that citizens of this county love are not being changed or even being proposed for change in the language in Chapter 2. What we are recommending, the reason we are making a recommendation is not because anybody on the outside has suggested it to us. We are doing so because we deal daily with attorneys and developers and people who fuss over language. Much like I think you've heard some people fussing over the language during your commission comments, and people see it from 2 different points of view. And when you read Chapter 2 and you read Chapter 8, or you read Chapter 2 and Chapter 4 and you fuss over the language, you tie up time. You make opportunities for debate and discussion. And our only desire was to reduce the possibility for debate and discussion and reduce the potential for having to make decisions about what that language says. Because let me bring this back around to Chapter 19 and the decision by state statute. Local decision-making must respect private property rights. And the more often you have to make a local decision about which way the language reads, the more often you have to take those property rights into consideration. So that's the basis for and the reasoning for the proposed changes to Chapters 1 and 2, or mostly 2, and of course the Chapter 19, which you've already seen is a verbatim basically of Florida statute. And so with that, I'll be happy to stop talking and take any questions that the board members may have.
Great. Questions for staff?
Just
Comments?
comments. So Clyde also too. Until this is amended or until this state law is sort of built into our comprehensive plan, we're not allowed to do any more comprehensive plan amendments until this is processed. Is that accurate?
We can work on them, but we can't send them to the state because they're not going to look at them.
Okay. So this isn't something that's discretionary. It's not something that we could modify because we think we could do a better job of it than somebody else could. It's really being dictated to us by the legislature that here's how you're going to conduct business.
Yes.
And without that, without doing this, the process by which people's property rights have rights to do certain things, right, given in the rest of the comprehensive plan, stop if we don't do this.
Yes, amendments to the comprehensive plan that have been made and that have been submitted cannot go up to the state.
And even something I guess we also didn't talk about, if the county wanted to do something in its comprehensive plan that was for some purpose, that was in the best interest of the county as a whole, having nothing to do with the private sector, having nothing to do with developers or anybody like that, we couldn't process that comprehensive plan amendment.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, the only thing that we are required to do is to create a property rights chapter in our comprehensive plan. It consists of 4 property rights. That's it. That's the only thing that we're required to do. And yet we've, for some strange reason, we're using that requirement as an opportunity to make enormous deletions in Chapter 2, which we've now reduced to nothing more than definitions. Let me just briefly go through some of the protections that are being removed. Compatibility in neighborhoods, that's being taken out. Concurrency in parks is being removed. Concurrency with roadways is being removed. Protections of wetlands is being removed. Protection for threatened and endangered plant and animal species is being removed. Protections for the St. Lucie River Estuary and Indian River Lagoon are being removed. The requirement to continue to work to implement Indian River Lagoon South is being removed. Shoreline, mangrove, seagrass, and oyster bar protections are being removed. 75-foot shoreline protection zone is being removed. Protection for the Loxahatchee River is being removed. Concurrency standards for sanitary sewer, solid waste, drainage, potable water, parks and recreation and transportation facilities is being removed. All developments must meet the concurrency requirements of this plan is being removed. The requirement that new development shall pay the cost of the facilities is required is being removed. Impact fee review is being removed. The requirement that the capital improvement plan ensures that concurrency management strategies are fiscally feasible and expenditures are properly prioritized to meet critical needs is being removed. Those are some of the things that are being removed. And those are the pillars of our quality of life in Martin County. And saying that these things are redundant is just nonsense. These are in here in order to provide us protection, and this is just opening us up to be no better than any other county in Florida. And I'm extremely disappointed that these changes are being proposed. We've never, ever contemplated anything this dire, this drastic, this harmful in Martin County, and I certainly hope that all commissioners will support me in retaining these critical protections that make Martin County different.
Thank you. Mr. Doolin, I had the same questions that Commissioner Hurd just posed yesterday when I read some of the strike-throughs. So, and you and I had the opportunity to meet and discuss exactly, and when you said these have been removed, I would like you to go over the conversation yesterday. Again, when you see this strike-through, it appears that things have been removed. So can you indicate, the list that Commissioner Hurd just went over, where those items, what has been removed, if anything, and where they are retained?
I'm not prepared to go through the entire list. That would require examining multiple chapters of the comprehensive plan. I can hit on a couple of the high spots. This is text in Chapter 4 of the future land use element. It deals with density transition. I think it was the first item that was mentioned just now. All of this language that you see highlighted is not proposed for change. It is proposed to be retained. And the language that is in Chapter 2 really is a summary of this language. So this is where the detail and the protections are and have been for decades and will remain. And it's just one example of how Chapter 2 is a summary of other chapters. I'll go into Chapter 9 for a couple of spots that deal with a couple of other items that were mentioned, that are mentioned in Chapter 2. Okay. Here is the protection of wetlands and the protection of natural systems. Everything you see highlighted, and even this part right here that I didn't quite highlight, are all being retained. No change is being proposed to any of this language. It goes into much greater detail, talking about soil types and the use of the Martin County Soil Survey, illegal activity in wetland alteration, identification of wetlands. All of this language that's in Chapter 9 would stay in Chapter 9, and no deletion or change to it is being proposed by this plan amendment. This gets into the density transfer of wetlands. There's been an allowance in the plan for many years. That's not discussed in Chapter 2 at all. The wetlands of special concern is discussed here, not discussed in Chapter 2 at all. The detail is all here in the source chapter that Chapter 2 is summarizing. Likewise, upland habitat protection is something that's mentioned in Chapter 2, but there's only 2-3 small paragraphs on it. I'm going to get down to some teal language. This is all wetlands here. All of this language in yellow was wetlands, and Chapter 2 doesn't go into anywhere near this kind of detail. But here is the protection of native upland habitat in Chapter 9, conservation and open space. And this is all the language that is the source language that Chapter 2 is summarizing. And Chapter 2 doesn't go into anywhere near this kind of detail that Chapter 9 covers on the subject of upland habitat. And so this is the basis for, and these are just 3 examples of what I mentioned in my presentation earlier.
Okay, we have a couple lights, and Taryn, is that a new light? Yes.
I just want to address a couple comments, and I think to reiterate where Mr. Doolin was on this. You know, staff works with this comp plan on a regular basis, and in defense of staff, in our consultation with legal particularly, we felt that some of those areas where the language was not clear or contradicted other language or was duplicative but not the same led us up for some challenges from a legal perspective. So, you know, we are asked by other commissioners all the time, if you could make changes and make things more understandable for the general public and the developers and the other legal folks, what would those changes be? So staff is bringing that forward. That's why that's our job, is to make these recommendations to the board. And as Mr. Doolin, is there anything that's been taken out that is not reflected somewhere else?
No, the language is all in other chapters, and in many cases in more detail. In some cases, different language, different use of language, but it's covered in the rest of the plan. As I said, the rest of the plan's not changing.
And Commissioners, Paul Schilling, Growth Management Director, just something to consider here as well. The folks, your staff, your dedicated staff, and a team of many individuals work in the trenches on a daily basis and deal with these regulations, and specifically the comprehensive plan and the land development regulations. And we, from time to time, have quite lively debates on very simple things. So any endeavor we can get through to eliminate the decisions on what should be stricter and what should be not, in essence, should be eliminated because of the fact that those items are covered in many pages within their respective chapter elsewhere in the plan. So you don't go to chapter 2 and then you're done. You go to the other 50 pages that are associated with that particular subject matter, and you must comply with all of those. So you don't stop at chapter 2. The idea with eliminating these messages, this code and provisions in chapter 2 is that we can point a citizen or a developer or an attorney to that respective chapter, and that's where they find all those regulations. So I would just add that for your consideration, and thank you. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, Commissioner Hurd, you had your light on.
Yeah, so the premise of this, the incentive for this change was to create a property rights element, which consists of the right of a property owner to physically possess and control his or her interests in the property, including easements, leases, or mineral rights. The right of a property owner to use, maintain, develop, and improve his or her property for personal use or for the use of any other person subject to state law, the Martin County Comprehensive Plan, and Martin County Land Development Regulations. The right of the property owner to privacy and to exclude others from the property to protect the owner's possessions and property. The right of a property owner to dispose of his or her property through sale or gift. That's what we were required. Why on earth would we go to the heart of our comprehensive plan and gut it? Because that's what you're doing. You said, Mr. Doolin, that these deletions in Chapter 2 are mere summaries of the protections that are found throughout the rest of the comprehensive plan. If that's the case, then why on earth remove them? If there are more details in the comprehensive plan, great. Oh, thank God you haven't proposed removing those yet. But to remove summaries in the chapter that is intended to provide a summary and to provide definitions is ridiculous. At whose behest did you initiate these deletions? All you were required to do was to create a property rights element with 4 points. And instead, you've taken on the entire summary of Chapter 2.
Commissioner, if I may, a couple things. One is we're not gutting anything. We're providing, in my opinion,
9 pages is gutting.
One at a time.
In my opinion, we're providing more transparency and more clarity and the elimination of redundancy in the plan. We have several hundred pages of regulations that we're all familiar with. To rely on a couple sentences in a summary that summarize a very complex subject, as Mr. Doolin just showed you with several pages of plan, I think is not a good thing in my professional opinion. The other thing is, I said along the same lines, is when we get into arguments and debates on what is stricter, the whole plan applies anyway. So we're not taking any of the plan policies. We're just eliminating the potential for conflict and so forth and so on. So
what's wrong with having a stricter policy determining which is stricter? That's the policy. What's wrong with eliminating?
Okay, Ms. Story, you had your light on?
Yes.
And then we'll go to Commissioner Jenkins.
Krista Story, Senior Assistant County Attorney. Let me address some of the legal perspectives on this. First of all, yes, the statute requires the adoption of a property rights element, but the other legal parameter that we must comply with is we must always maintain internal consistency in the plan. So in the professional judgment of the county attorney's office and your professional planners, simply adopting a new Chapter 19 is not appropriate or not appropriate from a policy perspective or from a legal perspective. That's why you see embedded in Chapter 1 some of the language related to property rights. The other issue is Chapter 2. There have been longstanding concerns and longstanding concerns over that chapter, and the fact that language within that chapter is not identical to or reflective of other provisions of the plan. With the heightened mandate from the state that property rights be considered in all local decision-making. Yes, we took a look at the plan as a whole. We took a look at the issues that the county administrator mentioned to you, that your planning staff. Yes, do we think that some of the language in Chapter 2 is legally problematic? Yes, correct. The other thing is Chapter 2 did not always look like this. Chapter 2, at one point in time, and Mr. Doolan's more aware of the facts, so was in fact, prior to 2013, it was a definitions chapter and some reiteration of goals, some of the goals. It did not include summary of other provisions of the plan, and it did not summarize those provisions of the plan in a way that uses different language. There's one particular, if you look at the very beginning of the plan, the protections that apply for residential communities and to protect residential areas from intrusion by industrial and commercial. The language in Chapter 2 talks about no negative impacts. The remaining, if you look to Chapter 4, first of all, there's more detail, and the terminology there is inconsistent uses. Chapter 2 uses the word negative impacts, no negative impacts. That difference in terminology, yes, is a concern, and that's one of the things that we are bringing forward to the board's attention so that we can address and fix and have a document that we feel is defensible. You're all aware, and staff is acutely aware, of the debates and the issues that have occurred during ongoing litigation over provisions of the comprehensive plan. And yes, and our professional recommendation to you from your administrative staff, from your planning staff, from the county attorney's office, is what we have proposed to you. So it is not simply a matter of adopting a property rights element. That's not correct. It requires more than that. So, and I'm looking at Ms. Woods.
And Ms. Story and Mr. Schilling and Mr. Doolan summarized that perfectly. All I wanted to reiterate was we ought to be able to, and that is staff's goal, to open our cherished comprehensive plan and easily understand what the requirements are and where it is, and we ought not have debate about what something means and trying to do subjective standards. We need to be really clear about the protections that are in our plan, and by making that clear, as Mr. Doolan pointed out, we make our plan more legally defensible.
Thank you. Commissioner Jenkins, you've been waiting so patiently over there.
Well, keeping in mind my light went on 20 minutes ago, and everybody stole my thunder, which is nothing new here because I'm a little slow. Yeah. But at the same time, I think reiterating once again, the questions may be asked in a different direction. Is there anything that Commissioner Hurd stated that is not addressed, that is being taken out of Chapter 2, that is not addressed in the remaining part of the comprehensive plan in its appropriate spot?
No, it's addressed differently in other places.
As it has been since the inception of the comprehensive plan, yes.
Yes.
And this language that is in Chapter 2 was put in 2013. So, go ahead.
Yes, it was put in 2013.
All right. Commissioner Hurd asked the question, under whose direction did you do this? I can answer that question. and I think everybody sitting up here other than Commissioner Hetherington can answer that question, that in the 2016 or early 2017, you had direction from this board to do whatever to the redundant, conflicting language in the comprehensive plan. I remember that. That was one of the very first things that that happened after the current commission majority took the board. So you did that under the direction of this board, you know. So that's the answer to that question. So, thank you.
I'm going to take a pause here, seeing as this is a public hearing, and ask for public comment. I do have one speaker request form from Greg Braun. If you would like to approach, we have 3 minutes. If anybody else would like to provide public comment on the item, then please fill out a speaker form and provide to the bailiff. Good morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration of this this topic. My name is Greg Braun. I'm the Executive Director of the Guardians of Martin County, a Hope Sound-based nonprofit environmental conservation organization with a donor base of over 1,500. As each of you know, our focus is on growth management, responsible growth, and clean water. The Guardians acknowledge that the intent of this, the impetus for going forward, is to develop a property rights element, and we acknowledge that you need to go ahead and do that. The Guardians Board, however, requests that you keep in place the portions of the rewrite that currently proposes to eliminate the overall goals, objectives, and policies that are presently contained in Section 2.2. Even if, as Mr. Doolin has indicated, all the information is contained in other portions of the comp plan, we feel that stating these components in Chapter 2 is essential in framing the overall goals, policies, and objectives of the comp plan. The existing wording in this section was developed as a result of a series of public workshops that resulted in statements that reflect the desires of the community. The Guardians participated in that multi-year effort. In fact, I was specifically tasked by the Guardians back in 2013 to become engaged in that long process that included not just county administrative kinds of procedures, but also public meetings. Addressing the private property rights does not necessitate abandoning these well-thought-out statements of the overall goals, policies, and objectives. As we have heard, included in the portions of stricken language is information about the protection of residential areas from incompatible uses, preservation of natural upland habitat that is used for threatened and endangered species, allowing growth management and code enforcement to implement compliance with PAMP requirements, supporting a healthy IRL in St. Lucie Estuary. These are the very standards that make Martin County such a great place to work and live. The comp plan has not thwarted good, responsible development. We have continued to grow, and we have done so at a sustainable rate. And the comp plan has ensured that we attract clean, high-quality residential and commercial developments. It's what keeps our property values high and makes us the envy of other more densely populated counties, where for the most part, crime rates are higher, taxes are higher, traffic is worse, schools aren't as good, and the quality of life is lower. Go ahead and make the changes for the property rights, but don't sacrifice the rest of the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Ms. Woods, do you have a light on, or is that an old line? Commissioner Camping. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Flanagan, would you like to make public comment?
Yes, I would. For the record, Joe Flanagan. I sit on the LPA, and at that meeting, before Mr. Doolin made his wonderful presentation and did a very clear job, I would encourage you, if you haven't already done so, go back and look at September 16th LPA meeting. There was an applicant that had met all the requirements, but the fact that there were only 3 of us in attendance kind of put it in a situation, because of the applicant was for Cove Road. And I've been a big advocate of the fact that 15,000 cars a day are on Cove Road, and we were being asked to approve a plan for an additional 100 homes there, and then a little bit further west, previously another 125, and then further down on Cove Road between Salerno and Cove, up to like 200, and yet Cove Road still has 15,000. And each of those others, it was a 4-to-1 vote or a 3-to-2 vote, and I was in opposition to those applicants, but they did pass. In this case, there were only 3 of us. I actually made the motion to deny the applicant the request, and the legal reminded us that if we do that, you have to specify, here are the 15 criteria that you have to meet in growth management in order to do that, and they complied with each of those. So we were held hostage by the plan, and they said, well, you're not objecting to the applicant, because they did a phenomenal job of presenting. We were kind of handcuffed by the plan, because we were worried about the environmental impact of those houses, the traffic and those things. So if you'll go back and listen to it, Chairman Moyer made a really good way of stating it, of that we accept the applicant, but we request the county go back and review some of the plan. So again, September 16th, go look at that, and I'm sure this Thursday's meeting will address some of those. But it was concerning, because I felt hypocritical, because there were only 3 of us. I had to vote in favor of it because of the way the motion was worded. And in all the others, I had voted against them. So September 16th, go back and look at it, please.
Thank you. Commissioner Campy.
Thank you very much. I knew when I read about this agenda item that it was going to appear today that it would be controversial. This falls right into the sweet spot of the debate that a portion of our public has with the other portion of the public. It is reminiscent to some of the battles that we've had in the past, and I mean, 10 years ago, when this battle was more of a constant, daily kind of a tug of war, if you will. I've been happy over the years that it has settled down a bit. But then this morning I figured, all right, I'll just lay low and just hear what's going on and see what this is going to progress. I, like the rest of you, and I appreciate the printed version. There has been a flurry in the last several days of urgent emails and desperate to how dare us change anything, and we'll be remembered for our decisions today. I never asked the staff to do any part of making any of the changes that they do. And I apologize that all of you, especially you 2 gentlemen, are, once again in the crosshairs. But when I hear my colleagues, who I respect, go into a more historic rant, in my opinion, of misinformation, of exaggerated information, words like, and I was writing them down as fast as I could, enormous changes, dire consequences, drastic changes, gutting the comp plan. That doesn't do any one of us any good. It doesn't bring forward a fair and logical debate. If anything, it forces me to then ramp up what level of participation I planned on having, because I have always said we don't really know how many people are watching these meetings, but the ones that are very interested in our community. And if we're going to fairly debate things, fine. But when someone says that you're about to remove or destroy or gut the compatibility of neighborhoods, parks, roadways, you're going to remove all of the wetland protections, animal and plant protections, waterway protections, the impact fee review process, capital improvement plan review, the Indian River South will be protections will be removed, shoreline and oyster bed protections will be removed, the 75-foot shoreline protection zone will be removed, the sanitary and sewer protections will be removed, development concurrency will be removed. I can't sit quietly back, because it doesn't make a difference what either of you 2 gentlemen say today. The narrative has already been written on what you've done, and what, if we vote to approve it, will happen. We've gutted the comprehensive plan. That's a rally cry for a certain portion of the public. Now, sadly, within that certain portion of the public are people that rely on others that are much more tuned in to give them information. Not necessarily fair or accurate information. It's a point of view. Commissioner Hurd has a point of view. We all do. But when you fan that flame that somehow staff, either because someone secretly asked you to do it and you're working as agents on behalf of some nefarious movement, which obviously is not the case, or that some of the commissioners, including myself, might have put you up to this, that we've used the concept that came down from the state that you had to make a property rights element change to our comprehensive plan, as did, as Mr. Doolin originally led off with, every municipality in the state of Florida, every county, everyone will be doing this. I remember when we discussed this originally that we asked you to move very quickly so that we could be at the front of the line, because I can imagine, we all understand the speed of government, and the higher you get up the ladders of government, the minutia starts to increase and it slows down. So getting things through Tallahassee is challenging in general. Now every single municipality is going to have to force something into the system. How can it not slow down? And then remember that, as Commissioner Smith said, you can continue to review applications for changes to the comp plan, but you can't submit them. So officially, we have basically grind to a temporary halt. How long is that temporary halt? We won't know. Now, I've always felt it difficult for staff, and one of the reasons I appreciate and value staff so much is that and when you do something right, you're a hero. And when you do something that people disagree with, then you're corrupt and incompetent. This morning, some of the commission and members of our public would think that you two are incompetent and corrupt. And the whole department and everybody else. I guess we'll lump you in Ms. Story and anyone else that's worked on this. Now, Mr. Doolin, we kidded in the beginning. Remind us of what your title is, what your responsibility is within growth management.
Comprehensive Planning Administrator.
You're focusing your professional attention on that category, correct?
Correct.
How many days a week?
7.
Well,
while you're working in the building,
5.
5 days a week. How long have you been doing it?
I've been in the Comprehensive Planning Division for over 20 years.
Okay. Every day, 20 years, you live and breathe this document.
Correct.
I would personally say that other than Nikki Vanvano, you are probably the most educated and informed on our comprehensive plan. I know you're a modest person, so you don't have to agree with that. That's my opinion. After Miss Vanvano, you were next. And that is, from my perspective, an unbelievable compliment, because you are following in her footsteps of knowing it and living it. So it must be difficult for you to sit there with the professional look on your face to hear that you're destroying it and that you are tearing it and gutting it and everything else. And then I heard something that was interesting, that where do these changes come from? How did this begin? And Ms. Story said that the Chapter 2 looked very different until a very specific point in time, 2013. Now, some people don't remember what 2013 is. I do. That's when Patrick Hayes and I left the county commission and we gave up the majority to the other side, if you will, a different philosophy. And I've watched it several times. Maybe some people don't, but I have. I've watched the reorganization of that meeting when Commissioner Hurd became the chairman, Ann Scott was sworn into office, John Haddix was sworn into office, and the majority switched from the last 12 years of what they called the pro-growth or the destroy majority to a new majority. Later that day, on the first day, a former county commissioner with a long-standing record, an architect of the comprehensive plan, one of the original authors of it, sat right there like a member of staff and began a process that one of our public speakers mentioned was at town hall meetings and community meetings, and how wonderful. I would assume, and I wasn't invited to those meetings, didn't attend those meetings, it was a specific portion of the population that attended those meetings. Because look, and rightfully so, they won the majority, staff follows a majority's rule, they had it. But I would also remember, and again, this is just my opinion, because I know that there are legal experts out there that might be listening to what I'm saying and figure out a way that they can poke me with it. The county also had entered into an unprecedented time of legal issues, lawsuits. The property on US 1 at Sea Branch, Martingale out on Martin Highway at 95, the big one that we don't even have to mention anymore, all because of actions and policies that were directed of staff by the new majority and their advisors to do these things. So when we hear that somehow the majority who votes today will be remembered, I don't forget the last majority and some of the decisions that they cost us as taxpayers. I think fairly we could say millions and millions of dollars. Now back then, and I'm not asking you to respond because you're professionals, but back then I would assume you were under more pressure to change things that you didn't think were necessarily things that needed to be changed, but a majority rules, and we are all in for a majority rules. So I'm frustrated and disappointed by this process because yes, you opened up the conversation because the legislature made you do it. But given that opportunity, if you worked anywhere in the private sector and as professionals you said, look, we think that and legally, we think that there's some language here that's either redundant or, I wrote the words down, that added a level of transparency or made it a little more, added clarity and eliminated redundancy. Anywhere else that would be classified as a good thing, and you'd be heralded for your work. For, as Ms. Krista said, to defend her staff, you know, when you were challenged by a commissioner that says, why did you do this? Why didn't you just do what you were supposed to do, the limited thing? Because professionally you felt that through many meetings, correct me if I'm wrong, that this was the logical, appropriate thing to do to create a better document. Nothing was gutted. I was going to go point by point and make you respond. Was this gutted? Was this removed? But we get it. You've said clearly several times, each of you, that it hasn't been. But if people aren't paying clear attention, it would seem like it is. And it's not. For you to make the document more effective and efficient and transparent, some don't like that because it makes it easier for the process to work. And if your goal is to not make the process easy, look, none of us want to turn Martin County, whatever people think, into Broward or Miami-Dade or whatever. For the last 20 years or so, the no side or the slow it down as possible, make it as complicated as possible side has had the majority for only 4 years. So the remainder of the time, from 2000 when Commissioner Smith showed up for those original 12 years, and then there were 4, and then the last 5 or 6 years, the group that everyone is supposed to be afraid of because we're going to destroy Martin County, we've been in the majority. And when people brag at how wonderful Martin County is to live, we have been the stewards of that process. I commend former Commissioner Herchala and the others that put that plan together. But it wasn't the 10 Commandments. It wasn't etched in granite. It is a living document. Sometimes it's gotten better. Sometimes maybe there's been changes that weren't necessarily ideal. But I think that we have been stewards of the process. And for the last generation or two that people love Martin County either to stay or to move here, there's been humbly being part of it for a time, been part of this. So this whole charade that we're doing that you're destroying it and if we vote for it, we're monsters also, is nonsense. And I didn't plan on saying a third of this, but I don't want the staff to have to sit there and take this kind of insults either written ahead of time that our public reads, because this gets promoted all over the place to people that might not know the true story. I felt it appropriate to defend the process, and I congratulate you for thinking about what else can we do to make this a better document. It's still the same document, it's just clearer. And I would make a motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Hard to follow. Just a couple of things I think I would add to all that. What's interesting is that prior to this date of 2013, certainly in my years of being here, I can't tell you how many times members of the public would come to the podium with any recommendation of change to the comprehensive plan, and they would hold it up and say, this is the award-winning comprehensive plan, and don't change it. That was prior to 2013. 2013 comes in, and as Ed just described fairly accurately, individuals came forward, ran the changes, and added things into the comprehensive plan that staff really, quite frankly, from my perspective sitting here, really didn't have much to say because they weren't allowed to say much of anything, because the individual that was running the program had control of the board, and that was just the way it was going to be, which I always thought was interesting, that we had a member of the public running the county. All that being said, I think what's come out of this are two things for me. Most importantly is the state looks at counties and looks at cities and looks at our comprehensive plans and looks at the way that we do what we do here locally as home rule. And there is a movement, and has been a movement in Tallahassee for a better part of 20 years, at every single opportunity that the state feels it's in the driver's seat to be able to do so, is take those rights away from us as local government to do what we think is right for our community, that the community thinks we ought to be doing relative to the perspective of our county. I would go back, and if you really want to talk about gutting comprehensive planning, probably 5-6 years ago, DCA was done away with at the state level, which was the state end of comprehensive planning. So when we would pass a comprehensive plan, there was a thorough review at the Regional Planning Council level, and then the Regional Planning Council level would send and transmit up to the state. The state would have its thorough review, and we would get comments, what was the other word? Comments and
Objections,
Objections, thank you.
recommendations, and comments.
Right, that's what it was. And we'd get this document back, and we'd either address them, fix them, challenge them, do whatever we do, but that was the process. That's done away with. That doesn't exist anymore. DRIs, developments of regional impacts, were done away with, which was when a development came in over 1,000 units, I believe was the threshold. That project was reviewed regionally. So to the county to the north of us, the county to the south of us, the Regional Planning Council would weigh in, and everybody get a full understanding of what things looked like. That is gone. This year, I believe there were 21 preemptions that were done at the state level of local ability to do home rule. Gas stations, as a perfect example, get to kind of go wherever they want, and we don't have any more input as to how many pumps, what's the size of the canopy. We don't get to do that anymore because the legislature has sought that they are smarter than we are, and they know better how to govern those decisions on growth management than we do. Just so much of this, is interesting, because what's driving so much of this at the state level, the state is pressured on their end by all sorts of different forces to make things simpler, faster, and more straightforward to do. And the more that they can remove local government out of the way of that process to happen, better for the state, better for Florida. This amendment today, which has gotten an awful lot of discussion about a whole bunch of other things, which is typical Martin County, is just another piece of that. It's another bite at that apple to keep taking a swing at us until eventually, when counties push back or counties change or do whatever they want to do, the legislature will just keep pushing back as hard as that they can on us not to have local say relative to what we think Martin County ought to be, or St. Lucie County on their side, or Palm Beach ought to be on their side, or Hendry, or whoever. And so they view us, they view this process, they view this conversation today as exactly the reason why they should preempt us and take more issues away from us, because we just bugger it all up every chance we can get. At least that's their perception of this whole thing. I think one of the most important things that Krista said, probably Taryn said, probably Sarah said, so you have actual attorneys, administrators that have law degrees, have administrative degrees, you have comprehensive planning, people that have been in the business for decades. The one most important thing, and this was left out of public comment, and I think the overall discussion of this thing is legally defensible. The fact that our staff is trying to put us in the very safest, best position relative to challenges to anything that comes forward to us as a development order, as a comprehensive plan amendment, as a land use change, or as a zoning change, for me, for one, is really what makes Martin County, I think, in many ways stand out, in many ways better than a lot of our other contemporaries in the business. Those two individuals over there, that individual work tirelessly to put us in a position to where we can go to court if we had to defend ourselves and win. And that's for our residents. That's for the growth management strategies in Martin County. That's the difference between what the state doesn't understand, between what they should be doing and what we should be doing. There are 67 counties that all view this process differently, and there's a reason for that. We all came from different places. We all grew up in different times, if you will, as counties, and we see things differently. The way Miami-Dade sees things versus how Hendry County sees things, how Escambia County, are dramatically different across the state of Florida. And we like it that way. If you want to live in Miami-Dade, God love you. If you want to live in Escambia, good for you. Have at it. If you want to live in Martin County, there are reasons why people choose to live here, or you could live in 67 other counties for that matter. But the reason why we get to be the way we are is because we have worked through the decades of this comprehensive planning process that makes it as good as it can be. I mean, I would argue, one of the comments earlier was that the comprehensive plan hasn't done for us what we would have wished it would have done. I would agree. I think probably the biggest failure of all comprehensive planning, from the inception of comprehensive planning, there was no requirement for vision. There was no policy that said, this is what we want to look like in 50 years, and here's the roadmap on how you ought to get there. Had there been visuals, had there been pictures, had there been some idea about, this is what we want to look like, then all of the strategy to get there would have followed that trail to get there. What happens now, somebody picks up that book, says, okay, here are the rules I got to play by, and they come in and they drop a box inside of our box. And many times people don't like it. Well, guess what? The architects, the quote-unquote architects of that thing, that's what they created. They created the box that's created 99% of what you see in Martin County today. And whether we like it or we dislike what ended up happening, you can thank that black little book there for guiding us in that direction. Was it better in 2013? Probably not. Was it held up as the award-winning comprehensive plan even before that? Multiple times by those that are supportive of don't do anything to change the comprehensive plan. And now, ironically, we get, this long-winded email stuff that says, oh my God, you're doing all this stuff to the comprehensive plan, don't do it. I just find it fascinating. Anyway, I think you guys do a great job. Staff, thank you for putting us in the position that you put us in to protect us and make us legally defendable. And with that, I'll second Commissioner Campy's motion from earlier.
Okay, I'm going to take one more comment and just be cognizant. We're past our closed captioning break. Commissioner Hearn.
We boast about our emphasis upon public participation and transparency. How many public hearings were held? How many town hall meetings were held? How many workshops were held to review this before it was brought to us?
The LPA hearing.
So none.
Not true.
One LPA hearing, which was a requirement, but no workshops were held, no town hall meetings were held.
That
no
was
public
advertised and noticed, as is typically.
Okay, we heard that the comprehensive plan was reviewed and changed in 2013. We had dozens of workshops and public hearings in order to engage our public.
Ms. Story.
Well, and maybe this is redundant. So the requirements for amending the comprehensive plan, the legal requirements have been followed and fulfilled, much as typically most every other follows this process. The process that's being referred to in 2013 was not the same process. That was a choice to conduct those that broad perspective. The other thing is, this proposed amendment impacts 2 chapters of the comprehensive plan and creates 1 additional chapter. 2013, there were many, many revisions proposed to the comprehensive plan, and that's a policy decision on how to proceed. We have followed all legal requirements. Regarding this process, there will be another public hearing, which would be, if the board transmits, the adoption hearing. So it's important that the public understands we have followed all the legal requirements.
Thank you. Clyde?
Ms. Story covered what I was going to say. Thank you.
And we're going to take Commissioner Campy.
Are you done, Commissioner?
I am.
I just wanted to clarify the same thing. We're making some changes in language. Nothing, as the gentlemen have said, nothing has been removed. The comprehensive plan is exactly the same with its protections and policies. You know, removing some additional language from a chapter is not the same thing that happened in 2013 when it was major changes. And I'm not criticizing those changes, because when you have the majority, you can do whatever you want, and they did, and they started immediately that day, and good for them. But they don't have the majority anymore, so they're more than capable and willing and able to submit written comment, verbal comment. I know some of them are concerned about coming to the meetings in person. I read every single thing that was submitted. There is a process. They don't have the majority anymore, and if they did, they would be making it more restrictive. It's a philosophy decision, and staff gets pulled in 2 different directions based on who's in majority. But this particular case was legally and professionally by growth management experts that with decades of experience decided that this is what they wanted. They've honestly told us, if you choose to believe them as honest men or not, no one put them up to this. They decided professionally that this would make the document more efficient, transparent, and effective. And some people don't like that, and that's their right.
Commissioner, to that point, the protections remain in place. There are no reduction in protections.
I would just make one final comment that Commissioner Smith brought up a point. And the reason we are sitting here today is because the state mandated us to add this private property element to our comp plan. And we all want the same, I think, unique character and quality of life in Martin County. And a document that is clear, concise, that is not confusing, provides the best, I think, quality of life. And that's why we do get preempted. When we have documents, policy documents, that are confusing, vague, contradictory, that is why we see those preemptions, and none of us want that. So if we want to continue to advocate that we are not preempted by the state, then we need to do our part, I think, and make things as clear, concise as possible, and I think this language does. The only thing I would ask Commissioner Campy, who made the motion on page 128, section 2.1, that last sentence that we had looked at, it says the overall goals, objectives, and policies contained in this chapter summarize goals, objectives, and policies in other parts of the plan.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner.
That should.
With your permission, we'll strike the words objectives and policies right there, because the objectives and policies are, for the most part, being removed.
Fine with me.
Seconder agrees. Okay, with that, we have a motion by Commissioner Campy, seconded by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Hurd dissenting. And that brings us to a little past due our closed captioning break. So we will take a 10-minute break. It's 10:53. We'll see you back at 11:05. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the board.
Jennifer's Curry.
You're on.
Okay, welcome back to our October 5th Board of County Commission meeting, and we are going to resume our meeting this morning with departmental number 1, Office of Management and Budget items which require board approval, which will be presented by Jennifer Manning. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jennifer Manning, OMB Director. I have 4 items on the agenda today, and the first item is permission to accept the Florida Department of Transportation Amendment Number 1 for the construction of the stormwater improvements at the airport. And they're given an additional $100,000 towards this project. And originally, the grant was for $480,000, so it's going to be $560,000. And the second part of the approval is an amendment for SUA Florida Holdings, and they're going to contribute another $20,000 for the match. The second item is permission to accept the Florida Department of Transportation Local Planning Agency grant for the Northwest Dixie Highway Sidewalk Extension Project. And this is on behalf of the City of Stuart. The grant agreement is for $430,864, and the total project cost is $550,864. And they're also the grant match is from the City of Stuart, and there's also an interlocal agreement between Martin County and the City of Stuart to implement and manage the grant. The third item is for a fiscal policy that we're required to update annually. The last fiscal policy for FY21 was approved on October 27th in 2020, so we're requesting the FY22 update, which has minor changes in the municipal taxing unit area, the investment policy, which we're just updating the last time we've updated the policy itself, small changes in economic development fund and the budget guidelines. Additionally, there are updates to the procurement delegation relative to the Consultant Competitive Negotiation Act, which moves the threshold from $200,000 to $500,000. Also, the cone of silence. All the changes are highlighted in the policy if the board would like to address those. The fourth item is approval for a budget transfer in the amount of $70,000. This is a request on behalf of the clerk. The Information Technology Services is requesting that on behalf of the clerk to upgrade to Office 365, which hosts their email, and it'll be competitive to what we have now. It will also help their system to enhance their system services and resiliency for email. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thanks. Does the board have any questions for Ms. Manning? With that, okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith. Seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Ms. Manning. Okay, our next item this morning is departmental number 3, a discussion and request for authorization to negotiate a contract to purchase 2 lots alongside Southeast Willoughby Boulevard, south of Salerno Road, for enhancement to the Employee Wellness Program. Presented this morning by Jim Gordon.
Looking very sharp.
Thank you, Jim Gordon, Public Works Director, for the record. So this item is to discuss potential enhancements to the Employee Wellness Program and to request permission to negotiate a contract to purchase 2 lots along Southeast Willoughby Boulevard. Utilization of our healthcare clinic has steadily increased over the past few years, and it's required the clinic to extend operating hours to provide service to our employees. It is projected that the utilization rate of the clinic is going to exceed capacity in the next few years at the current facility. The excess utilization, coupled with a lack of parking availability at the current site, led us to look into whether CARES Act funding could be utilized to enhance the wellness program. Administration set aside $3 million of CARE funding to address the possibility of moving forward with another clinic site. County staff enlisted the Gehring Group to perform an analysis of the feasibility of owning our own clinic facility. Their analysis was based upon their other government clients who have their own facilities and estimated an annual savings of almost $1 million after acquisition and build-out per year. Staff also reviewed whether the CARES funds could be utilized to rent an existing building, and it was determined that that funding could not be utilized for that purpose. The county staff believes that the best operational model would be to let a request for a proposal for a firm to manage the clinic much in the way that it currently is now, except it would be in a building that is county-owned. This would give us the ability to increase hours and increase the return on investment for the program. We have identified parcels totaling 2.2 acres on Southeast Willoughby Boulevard, which is adjacent to a 1.78 acre parcel that we already own. The 4 acres in total would be sufficient for the current and future needs for a wellness clinic. Preliminary discussions with the property owner have indicated that he is potentially amenable to selling it to the county. So our recommended action on this item is move that the board authorize staff to initiate a contract for the purchase of vacant land, and move that the board authorize the county administrator or designee to execute a contract to purchase for parcels A, B, and C located on the west side of Southeast Willoughby Boulevard, south of Salerno Road, to build an employee wellness center, with the understanding that staff will return to the board for approval once the due diligence process has been completed. I've got a aerial depicting the lots in question. The lot in red is the one that we already own, that's a county parcel, and then the lots in green are lots A, B, and C that I just spoke of, which total 2.2 acres, so the total site would be 4 acres in total.
Does that complete your presentation?
That concludes the presentation, yes.
Anybody have questions for staff? Commissioner Campy.
Mr. Gordon, thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. You and I had an opportunity to speak on this. And philosophically, I remember if we go back in time to when we decided to have an employee clinic many, many years ago, which I thought was an excellent idea, the concept of an employee wellness facility versus just having everyone be out on their own. There was even conversation of having it in the lobby of this building originally. And back then, the urgent care model was newer. There were some, but there wasn't then as many as there are now. And back then I was promoting the fact, and we ended up going that way, which I appreciate, was to take our constituent group of employees and the services that they required out to the private sector and partner with someone that already does this, because I personally believe that this is a very expensive endeavor. The technology is ever changing. The cost of either leasing that equipment or purchasing the equipment necessary to have a really comprehensive employee wellness facility is astronomical. And so I won't be supporting the motion purely because I think that instead of us building our own building and outfitting it for our staff and whoever other governmental entities might join us, I think we haven't necessarily reviewed the concept of if our current provider is doing that well, and I've been in that parking lot, it's a challenging parking lot. I also remember hearing some conversation of a partnership with potentially Palm Beach County or other outside of the county government entities, which would give us a larger footprint. One of my major concerns is having a single site is for our employees that live south of us or north of us or west of us. If you had to put the kid in the car and go somewhere after school or before school and you lived in northern St. Lucie County, it becomes more of an issue versus if we had representation, if you will, in north of us, central, and south. So I'd like to have an agenda item in the future to discuss what the future of our employee medical options for serving them are. I just don't believe that having our own facility, building our own facility, and even if we brought in a contractor to operate it, in my mind, is not necessarily the best strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, I think that our wellness center has been a tremendous success for us, and certainly I think that we've outgrown that space. So I'm supportive and will move staff's recommendation.
Okay. I'm going to, I had a chance to, this agenda item, I will say, when I was first presented, was kind of hard to get my arms around because it looked like a specific parcel, and there was a lot of background to it, and it sounds like, after multiple conversations with staff, that there is a need to increase the level of service, certainly, and provide. And our clinic provides, could improve on its return on investment. I wasn't sure if the particular course of action, what was the right way to proceed, whether it's this parcel or, did we investigate options? I appreciate that the fiscal impact section was provided and that we cannot use CARES funds for a lease option.
Correct. We can use it to purchase a property or build a site, but you can't use it for lease or rent.
I just think that maybe this could be, I agree with Commissioner Campy. We could probably provide a bigger picture of, what the services we need, how we could increase our return on investment and open it up to additional options, not just identifying this one particular parcel. There could be other parcels, there could be other partnerships, there could be other ways, I think, to skin this cat than just particularly this parcel. So with that, Commissioner Smith.
I agree with some of what some of my colleagues have said. I'm sure we all met with staff and all had our own thought processes. I certainly appreciate the idea that we have outgrown our capacity in the current location, and I'm supportive of us exploring how we do it moving forward. When we first looked at this, and Ed touched on this a little bit, we had a couple different ideas of doing it in-house or doing it outside or creating a new venue, but all of them showed, for the employee side of this, a really good return on I think both helping our employees, servicing our employees, and if you remember too, the original services that we provided were very, very narrow. I mean, there was like a handful of things that we could do, or that our vendor was going to do, and that is, I think, expanded dramatically through the services and through what's available now to our employees versus what was at least originally envisioned. My issue is more so with the site, and it's not so much that there's anything wrong with the site. It's more of the collective strategy of where do we site things. And I have this with every one of our siting discussions we have. Collectively, where should we be thinking about, collectively putting various components of our county structure together and what makes sense. 2 years ago, we had a conversation about the fairgrounds site, the existing fairgrounds site, and hiring the Regional Planning Council to do a really exhaustive, thorough study as to what is the highest and best use for the fairgrounds. And everything around the fairgrounds, because there's a lot going on within probably about a 2-mile radius of that. This kind of conversation leads me right back into that conversation. I think if we would more thoroughly vet and more thoroughly understand where things could be located collectively, I'd hate to create another single purpose out parcel that's disconnected from a whole bunch of other potential uses that would make a lot more sense to have on one site if that were achievable. And I know the parcels are getting harder and harder to come up with, and it's getting more and more challenging, but we do still have the fairground site, which is pretty centrally located to a whole bunch of our infrastructure, east, west, north, and south. I wouldn't mind necessarily picking up this piece of property, but I'm not supportive, at least at this point, of saying this is where a new wellness clinic ought to go. until we have the other broader conversation. And we've really looked at our assets to understand where would be the right place. You know, we have another parcel out back here that's sort of catty corner to our building. It's like 12 acres or something out there, from what I remember, something like that. Ideal location. If this building is to stay in its current purpose and we stay here forever, that might make sense to have it back there. The problem we get into is the access issues coming in off of Monterey and off of East Ocean. How do you access this place? If I don't watch it 1 or 2 times a day, there's a car that comes into our parking lot and comes flying up to this end, and then they can't get through to the plaza next door. They come down this aisle, then they stop at the end of this aisle, the first aisle over here, and they look, and that's blocked off, and then they get frustrated, they go back out again. And so even this site has some challenges to it in terms of how people come and go, and I think that ought to be looked at too collectively if we're going to go into this conversation. So those are my thoughts.
Commissioner Jenkins.
I'm sure that you spent quite a bit of time, or your staff spent quite a bit of time choosing this centrally located spot for this use, and I appreciate that. And how much was the potential savings, if anticipated savings?
The potential savings, if we bring the ownership of the facility in-house but still contract out the service, would be almost $1 million a year.
I'm in. I'll second Commissioner Byrd's motion.
Sure, go ahead.
Is that site specific, or is that just the idea that we would own the building, we would operate the building?
Yeah, it's not site specific. It would just be the model of owning your own facility versus what we currently do, where we're paying a vendor to provide the facility and the service. It would just be changing away from.
So,
but it's not site specific.
So on the motion for this, if it's not site specific, but it's for the purpose of creating our own facility somewhere, then I'm supportive of voting for it. If it's this site specific, then I'm not in a hurry to support. The concept, what you just said, if that were broken apart from, if it's not site specific, fine. But if that $1 million is predicated on this piece of property, then I'm not there yet.
It is not, Commissioner.
I know. I just
Yeah.
want to hear you say that.
Yeah, we just wanted permission to start the process.
I'm supportive of that if it's not site specific.
But then too, we also need to have a conversation of, the $998,000 does not include design, build, and construction. So depending on the site, that savings over time, it might not be, it's going to take you a while to back into that once you have a design, build, and construction. So you're not going to save $998,000 right off the bat. That should be a part of the conversation depending on the parcel, I think.
And we did identify CARES funding for this, which is a one-time option, and that is the time sensitivity of it. Doesn't mean it has to be the site, but if we want to use that CARES money to build the property, then we do need to move forward.
And what's the timeline for that funding? 2 years?
I'm looking over at George Stokes.
Where is he? Here he is. We'd have to have the money allocated by 12/30. I'm sorry, George Stokes, Assistant County Administrator, ARPA Specialist. Now is the new title. It feels like ARPA certified. ARPA certified. It feels like, or ARPA burned, I guess, or forged, as Mr. Donaldson likes to call it. 12/31 of 2024 is when you have to have the money. All your funds allocated and assigned, and you have to be done with construction by 12/31 of 2026.
I think you'll be done by then.
For a wealth of information.
That's one way of putting it, Commissioner. My wife has a different opinion of what that wealth of information is. So.
Is useful or not?
What?
Is useful or not?
Yeah.
At home.
George, to confirm, that's ARP. It's
ARPA. It's very confusing, Commissioners. You have CARES, but you're really actually going to use ARPA funds because the ARPA funds qualify it because it's a public health. You're separating your first responders and your government essential workers in a medical site that's outlined in ARPA, which wants you to I guess the way I categorize it is under ARPA, they want you to diversify your essential medical provider areas. So what we saw in the pandemic was you had people who were providing essential services all congregating in one area. So for example, a lot of people were going to say Cleveland Clinic, and then they were exposing themselves to COVID and other diseases. And what ARPA is trying to do is diversify and have people separate so that you don't have all your firefighters going to the same place, the same hospitals and so on and so forth. It's very confusing and convoluted, but it's in the 356 pages of ARPA, which is tabbed and highlighted on my desk. So I'd be more than happy to go through that with you if you want me to.
I think my preference is to see an item come back with multiple courses of action, with maybe exploring how we could approach the clinic, different siting options, and include costs for design, building, construction as well. So we do have a motion by Commissioner Hurd to accept staff's recommendation, right? And Commissioner Jenkins, you seconded that motion. Does anybody have any final comments? Okay, with that, we'll take the vote. We have a motion by Commissioner Hurd, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Opposed. Motion fails 3-2 with Commissioners Smith, Hetherington, and Campy dissenting. Commissioner Smith.
Madam Chair, I would offer up a second motion that would direct staff to continue with the conversation of a separate facility, and then to come back with potential alternatives for how, where, and why.
How is that different from the first motion?
Because that was site-specific to this parcel. And I asked that when the motion was made, if it were separated from the parcel being parcel-specific, I could support it. I just don't want us, because what this is asking is to go, I assume, to acquire this piece of property.
Yeah, this is to begin negotiations. We would still come back to the board before we acquired the property, but it would begin the negotiations with.
For that purpose.
For
the purpose of building a site here.
But not necessarily this particular parcel.
No, that's what this agenda leads us to.
Right.
And
But
I'm
your
saying-
motion is saying it's not site-specific.
No.
Is that correct?
Correct.
So do we want to restate your petition motion?
Again, that we ask staff to further the concept of creating an independent, what are we calling it on our side? Urgent care? Wellness center? And to come back to us with options for commingled locations, separate locations, but not specific to this site itself.
Second.
Madam Chair, question?
Yes, I have a question too.
Go ahead, you go first.
Everything you just said, I agreed with, but you threw in the word independent, and I just wanted the clarity for that. You want to explore all different courses of action. Define the way you put independent is what concerned me.
So I'm more than open to seeing other sites if there are other sites that are available, that it might be a standalone building. My preference is that it is commingled with another site or other sites of existing. But for instance, we have a parcel out back here. That would be, at least at this point in time, an independent parcel. And I don't mean that the prejudice is on independent. It's much more come back to us with options like, okay, we could do it back here, and here's what exists, and that $1 million saving still exists because it's not specific to this parcel. It's just the concept, which is what I'm hoping to advance the concept, just not the parcel itself specific to this presentation.
Okay, I understand. I was getting confused with the operating, with an independent operator or county okay.
No, it was more the site.
The site.
Sorry.
Commissioner Campy.
Thank you. While we're having that agenda item, would the board be interested in hearing or having staff investigate options for the future wellness of our employees that did not include us building our own private facility. You know, if we're stretching at the seams with our current set of circumstances, can't we continue to stay in the private market and add other operators into it, or speak to our current operator to see if there's expansion opportunities, or find a collaboration with other governmental entities? I know that what I've heard in Palm Beach County, they're creating their own, and look, 1.5 million residents, so they obviously have a tremendous amount of governmental employees and lots of municipalities. There might be something to be said for, an economy of scale where we're not out on our own versus collaborating with other government entities without ever building our own building. I'm not saying that that won't be the way you end up going, but if we only ask staff to focus their research attention on that, then they don't look at an option beyond building our own building. I'm just wondering.
In my mind, that's what I thought I heard as far as coming back with additional courses of action. Not just buying a parcel, but how to operate the clinic or how to partner to get our highest return on investment, and potentially where that would be located, whether it be buying, leasing, partnering. So in my mind, that's where I thought the conversation was going. So.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summation.
I'll take that.
Except not leasing.
Except for
Except
not.
leasing.
We'll include that as part of the analysis and just let you know what that
Well, you
looks
can't
like.
use the ARPA funds for leasing, so.
Correct.
If the intent is to use ARPA funds over the next 6 years or 4 years, I mean, it's not that you can't give us options so
Right.
that everybody understands and the public and understands from ours. You could lease a facility, but it won't be with ARPA funds.
Right. So I think that you should explore those options, but then there, under the fiscal impact section, then there's a clear understanding of these funds can be allocated to a purchase, but they cannot be allocated to a lease. Okay. Commissioner Campy?
Just one more comment on that. Look, if we don't use the ARPA funds to purchase a building, it's not like you're giving them back. We would just use them for something else.
Can I just some clarification just for a second? So Matt, the existing contract that we have expires next year. Is it next year or the year after?
Yes, ma'am, next year.
So from a staff perspective and an operational perspective, we would be possibly going out for requests for proposals formally anyhow. So, so this is kind of on the heels of that. So maybe we can do dual tracks where we can go ahead and get this RFP out, and then we will have formal responses as far as what the costs actually would be and what those options are. When we first started the clinic, we did exactly what it sounds like you're talking about. We did an RFP and we allowed the provider to either have their own facility and provide the services, or if we were to own our own facility, what that would look like. And so I think that it's just that going back and putting that out, if you will, so that we can get some hard numbers. It's hard for people to give you a cost estimate when they haven't sat down and actually know exactly what we're expecting. So that might be a better route.
Include ample parking in that RFP.
Well, parking is an issue, and I know the city of Stewart, they were brought a proposal to try and expand that parking, and they're still considering it. But parking is an issue.
And the width of the drive lines and the parking spaces would be.
We're in the city of Stewart, we don't have any ability to change the size of
This won't be in the city of Stewart.
That's correct. That's part of that's what you're dealing with, is the city Stewart's parking spaces diameter.
If we did do an RFP, though, does that give us, options if you're bringing back potential alternatives where we could partner with other, as Commissioner Campy said, to provide economies of scale? I'm afraid if you put out an RFP, then that limits the exploration of some of those alternatives.
It shouldn't. I mean, a request for proposals, if you do it correctly, you're just asking just that. Let the professionals in the community, tell us what they would recommend based on what we want to accomplish. I'm looking at Dawn. Is that?
But you're not welded to the idea that whatever those proposals are is what you're going to adopt.
No, you still have to review them.
Yeah, I think perhaps I think we have good direction, and what we can do is explore what we started with the Agrarian Group, which was the business decision. What's the best business model? We can work with you and bring an agenda item back to discuss some of these options or include it in the RFP. But I think we've got enough direction today without exploring it in full detail here right now.
Well, my only point was that the contract's going to be, we're going to be in this situation anyway, so it's just a
Yes.
matter of moving it up for months.
No, I got it.
Okay, so we,
Can I just ask one more?
go ahead.
So sometimes when I make motions, it comes back later that it was very confusing and what I thought I said I didn't say. So are you all like perfectly clear what we're doing with the motion?
I think we all have 7 opinions.
I'm sure we do. I just want to make sure that when we go back and review the tape someday, Doug didn't really say that. But if you guys, do I need anything else in the motion, or we?
No, we don't. Quite honestly, I think staff really looking at, there are some ways to save some money and provide better service, opportunities of new services, I should say. I think our clinic does a great job. Matt has explored different options. I think you all have looked at other governmental entities that have been able to save money and expand services, and I think we want to try to do the same thing. And I think you all have opened the door for us to look at multiple options on, kind of revisit it from the outside and bring it back in again.
Okay. Commissioner Hurd, are you comfortable?
I am.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Hurd. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we are moving to departmental number 4, discussion between 2 parcels for the proposed relocation to Public Works and General Services, with approval to issue a contract to purchase 1 parcel upon approval by the Board of County Commissioners, presented also by Jim Gordon.
You're looking very sharp today.
Still.
Where's Carla? She doesn't get to sit up there with you?
Oh, did you just?
Yeah.
I'm so. Okay.
I'm just already pre-jumping this presentation.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So yes, it's a daily double. Jim Gorton again, with the Public Works Director.
For Tuesday.
So this is a agenda item for the operations facility relocation. If you'll remember, in June 2019, $6 million in dedicated funding was secured to relocate the field operations and general services compound from the current locations. It's located on Aviation Way, which is part of the airport. It's a non-airport use, and the site, the way it's currently laid out, is not conducive to the service that we provide. In addition to that, we're also looking at Parks Ops, which is the facility that's located on the corner of Indian Street and Dixie, and combining all of the operations, the Public Works piece, the Parks Ops piece, and the General Services piece into one facility, because there's a lot of reasons why co-locating those facilities would be beneficial to our business needs. We did a space analysis last year based on those groups, and we came up with, the consultant came up with 25 to 30 acres is required to house all of those things. And then we did a site evaluation study that was just completed last month for the facility. So we came up with 2 options. Option 1, which is the figure on the left, is in Newfield, or what used to be called Pineland Prairie. There's 26.1 acres there that we're looking at. And then option 2 is in the South Florida Gateway. It's 29.7 acres, and I've got some figures that show those sites a little bit more in detail as we go forward. This is on the left, there's a conceptual site plan for the Newfield site. And on the right, the red hatched area is the area in question. If you'll note that red hatched area is offset from those roads, that was intentional because of the architectural standards in Newfield. This use was not very compatible to the architectural standards because generally we have industrial buildings and heavy equipment, and their architectural standards require that you have buildings and walls, decorative walls along the frontage of everything. So something we worked with them on was offsetting this parcel off of those roadways so that they could have all of those frontages for higher and better uses, and then we could have our facility behind them. The only problem with doing that, so our cost goes down, but the problem with doing that is you end up with a fairly odd-shaped parcel at the end of the day. But we can fit all of our needs. That's why we did the conceptual site plan, which is on the left, that shows that we can fit everything that we need to over there. This is option 2. This is South Florida Gateway. This is more of a rectangular, it is a rectangular parcel. It's 29.7 acres. There's plenty of area on that property. And we do have to create on-site dry retention and wet retention on that facility. Each parcel in South Florida Gateway provides their own water quality. Let me go back to the last one. In Newfield, there's an off-site cost to develop that property. This is over and above building the buildings on the parcel, and it's over and above purchasing the property. It was calculated at $2.8 million. The off-site costs would include building Boat Ramp Road, because right now it's an unpaved road. If we were to put the facility in there, we would have to pave that road and bring it up to standard. We also would have to build a master sewer lift station. The reason we would have to do that is because we'd be the first one in, so we'd have to build the big lift station in this instance because there isn't one out there now. We would also have to extend lines under the turnpike from the Martin Downs plant for water and sewer over to this facility. So those things, in addition to meeting the architectural standards, including street trees, there's about 400 street trees we would have to plant with this facility. It comes out to $2.8 million. So on the other site, the off-site costs are still significant. They're $1.6 million. That is for a standard lift station, not a master lift station. So it's an economy of scale thing. It's more than double to build the master lift station. We would have to build some access roads and turn lanes to get into the facility, and then we'd have to build the stormwater treatment that's shown on that figure. So you have a difference between the two sites of about $1.2 million of off-site costs. So with those items that I just went over, our recommendation is that we move that the board accept the staff recommendation of option 2, which is South Florida Gateway. It has a lower cost. And we direct staff to move forward with negotiations, prepare a sales contract, and authorize the county administrator or designee to execute the contract, and direct staff to return with an agenda item once due diligence is complete.
Okay.
That
Complete your
concludes the
presentation?
presentation. I'm sorry.
All
Do you have
right.
any questions?
Oh, yes. Commissioner Smith.
Thanks, Jim. As you recall, for last time we had this conversation, I was not a big fan of the Kiplinger site and still am not, and thankfully it was more expensive, so now I have a better reason not to be excited about it. I still wish that we had moved years ago in buying or acquiring the Willoughby site, which would have made it closer into, I think, more the core of the urban part of Martin County. However, all that being said, I think this site offers up tremendous flexibility, and it makes a whole lot of sense from access. I think 76 and the work that's going on out there right now and giving the expansion of that certainly will provide our staff with a more, I guess, easily accessible facility than others. So I'm supportive of this site, and I hope, and I would move support for this choice.
Also second.
So for clarity, we're authorizing staff to basically negotiate with the parcel owner.
Correct. We're going to.
And you'll bring back the.
Is us to negotiate with them. Our understanding is they have additional property on that parcel. So during the negotiation process, we'll talk about where on that site, and then we'll talk about cost for the site as well. And then we'll come back to the board once we have a contract in hand for your approval before it's finalized.
Great. Commissioner Smith?
Just one curious thing, Jim. I assume with the other facilities that are potentially going to be sited there, there'll be co-used, co-located water sewer facilities. Why do we have to do a lift station?
So the lift
No,
station will be required because the line will end at the facility that's to the north of us where the 1 million square feet of
Right.
area is. So we have to extend those lines down to our area, and then we have to pump that material
So does
up to the facility that they're building.
So the way it's being designed, the whole site, will every site have to have its own lift station?
Yeah, there's 3 sites on that facility, and there's going to be a master lift station on the north site, and then we'll have the 2 sites individually will each need their own lift station to get it off their site. Now, these are 30-acre sites, so it's
Yeah,
not
no, I
like
understand. And I'm just
a small parcel.
and not that you all don't know the answer to this, and I don't. If we weren't going there and they were developing the whole site as one master site, if you will, would they only have one master lift station and that would have connections to all of the locations, or would they still break up and have 3 separate lift stations and a master lift station out at the street?
I think that it's a sequencing thing. So they sold that north parcel first, so that's the one that had to get it's just like I was talking about on the Newfield site, is whoever comes in first builds that master lift station, and in this instance, it's the northernmost parcel. So the 2 southern parcels have to get their effluent up to that parcel. So it's just a sequencing thing, and because of the where the lot that was already sold and the first one that's going to come in for development.
If there's any room for further exploration on that issue with the developer of the whole site, that'd be great.
There is, and the developer of the site is taking into account those off-site costs. When we negotiate with them, we're going to take into account those off-site costs and work with them on the price of the property.
Great. Thank you.
And this kind of project seems like, we've talked about construction management. This seems like a project that would be good exploring on maybe how to use a construction manager.
Yes, absolutely. I think this would be construction management at risk, where we have it's a process we've talked about a little bit, where you have an initial design and then you bring in another party to manage it. You get a fixed cost that can't exceed, and the risk is on the manager that if it goes over cost, they have to figure it out.
Good.
I'm just pleased that we're one step closer to realizing Don Donaldson's dream.
I don't want to jinx it, so.
Yeah.
Just one step closer. We don't know how many steps there are, but we're one step closer.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Hearn. Is that correct? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And oh.
3.
Guy who gave up nothing.
And Cantor Highway?
That guy.
Oh, I thought that was in District 4.
Everything south of 9th
Oh.
Street.
Okay.
You can have a berm there
Well-
that blocks the road.
Yeah.
That has, we have entered the end of our agenda, so we are going to take end of the day public comment. Is there anybody that wishes to make public comment? Oh, I saw a couple people jumping from their seat there. Okay, with that, then our next well, I'm going to take commissioner comments. Any additional commissioner comment? Commissioner Jenkins.
Just that we're having our Hope Sound Festival on October 23rd. I said it last time, and I'll say it next week.
Okay. Commissioner Smith?
Doc Myers Park, I'm sorry.
It's a job fair, right?
No.
Okay.
Different.
Commissioner Campy? Commissioner Hearn?
Nothing for me.
Ms. Krista? Okay, with that, our upcoming meetings are October 14th, joint meeting with the City of Stuart School Board and the Village of Indiantown, and our October 19th regular meeting. Yes, Commissioner Smith. And with that, after your comment, we'll adjourn after.
You know what, just a general comment. And we do at different junctures thank our staff. Today was like a prime example. Our staff did a phenomenal job today. Regardless of what's said one way or the other, you all do a great job representing us and making us look incredibly good. So thank you all very much.
I would completely 100% echo that. And with that, we are adjourned.